Emma's arrival in Silver Ridge, Colorado, felt nothing like she imagined. She had pictured a peaceful return to a quiet mountain town, a place she hoped would help her rebuild her life. But instead, she stepped out of the taxi into a cold wind sharp enough to make her eyes water. Her flight delay had turned her day long and exhausting. And the winter storm warning had given her a nervous feeling she couldn't quite explain. She just wanted to reach the lodge, put her bags down, and breathe. Ever since her breakup 2 months ago, she had been moving through life like a soft echo of herself, tired, unsure, and too drained to pretend she was fine. She told herself this trip was a chance to reset, far away from the noise of her old life. But now, standing alone in the dim light outside the Evergreen Lodge, she suddenly wondered if coming back to this town was a mistake. The wooden lodge sat quietly on a hill, snow collecting on its roof and stairs. It looked like a place built for warmth and stories, but at that moment, all she felt was the icy air biting through her coat. She hesitated before knocking. But before her hand even touched the door, it swung open. 2 men stood there, older, calm, surprised. The first man, Daniel, had kind eyes behind his glasses and a gentle smile that made him look like someone who understood more than he said. He looked like he belonged in a place where fireplaces were always lit and everyone was treated like family. The second man, Mark, was taller and broader, with a quiet strength in the way he stood. He didn't smile right away, but his expression carried a natural warmth, like someone who cared even when he wasn't trying to show it. Both men seemed to freeze for a moment when they saw Emma, as if she wasn't who they expected, but also exactly who they had been waiting for. "You must be Emma," Daniel said, stepping forward with a thoughtful nod. "We've been expecting you." Emma blinked, confused. I didn't think anyone would actually be here tonight. The listing said caretakers, but I didn't know. There were 2 of us." Mark finished for her, his voice deep but welcoming. "We're here to make sure guests don't arrive to a cold lodge, especially on nights like these." Emma glanced at the sky, watching flakes drift down. "It feels like the storm's already starting." "It is," Mark said, "which means you came just in time. Come in before the wind takes you away." She stepped inside and immediately warmth wrapped around her like a blanket she didn't know she needed. The fire cracked softly in the stone fireplace, lighting the room with a soft golden glow. The smell of pine wood made her shoulders relax for the first time all day. Daniel closed the door gently. "You must be freezing. Can I take your suitcase?" She hesitated. She didn't like imposing, but Daniel's patient smile eased her worry. She nodded, and he carried her bag upstairs as if he had done it 1,000 times. Meanwhile, Ike disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a mug of steaming tea. "Trust me," he said, handing it to her. "This helps everyone survive Colorado winters." Emma warmed her hands on the mug, grateful for something steady to hold. She hadn't been shown this kind of simple kindness in a long time. It made her feel visible again. "You're very kind," she said quietly. Mark shrugged, though his eyes softened. "It's not kindness. It's hospitality." But Emma heard something else beneath his tone, something thoughtful, something protective. She wasn't sure why that made her chest tighten. Daniel came back down the stairs and joined them by the fire. "Your room's all ready. We heated it earlier so it wouldn't feel cold when you arrived." Emma let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. "Thank you. Really, I'm not used to people taking care of things for me." Mark glanced at her. "Maybe you should be." The words surprised her. She didn't know how to respond, so she sipped her tea instead, feeling her face warm from something that wasn't the fireplace. For a while they talked nothing deep. Just light conversation about the weather, the town, and her travel. Emma told them she hadn't visited Silver Ridge in years. Not since college, when she used to hike these mountains with friends she had slowly drifted away from. It felt strange coming back alone this time. Daniel listened attentively. "Sometimes coming back alone is exactly what we need. New beginnings work better without noise." Q smiled awkwardly. "That's what I'm hoping." Mark watched her with quiet curiosity, as if he could see the parts she wasn't saying. It made her feel strangely safe and exposed at the same time. When she excused herself to use the restroom, she paused near the hallway and overheard their voices, soft but clear enough to catch. "Mark, she looks tired. Not just from travel. Okay. Daniel, she's been through something. You can see it. Mark, we should make sure she feels welcome. She needs softness right now. Daniel, we will. She deserves it." Emma froze. Not because their words scared her, because they didn't. They sounded sincere, as if they cared without knowing her story, as if they didn't feel burdened by her alone arrival or her heavy silence. She hadn't felt that kind of consideration in months, maybe years. When she returned to the living room, the conversation shifted easily, but a strange warmth lingered between them. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It wasn't flirty. It was gentle, steady, and impossibly comforting by the time the clock neared midnight. The storm outside had fully arrived. Wind pushed against the windows, snow danced in the air, and the entire valley disappeared beneath a white curtain. Emma felt grateful she wasn't facing that storm alone. Daniel was the first to stand. "You should rest. Tomorrow might be a long day, depending on the storm." Mark nodded. "If the roads close, don't worry. We'll take care of everything." Emma felt a flutter she tried to ignore. "Thank you for everything tonight." Daniel smiled. "Good night, Emma." Mark gave a small nod. "Sleep well." She walked upstairs, feeling a strange warmth building inside her chest. Not romantic. Not yet, but a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. Safety. The guest room was soft and warm, the walls decorated with old photographs and mountain paintings. She set down her mug, sank onto the bed, and stared at the ceiling. She shouldn't have felt this comfortable around two complete strangers. She shouldn't have felt this drawn to the way they moved, the way they spoke, the way they looked at her, not with judgment, but with something steady and kind. She remembered the sound of Mark's voice telling Daniel she deserved softness. She remembered the way Daniel smiled with a quiet sadness, like he understood heartbreak too. She closed her eyes, listening to the wind outside. Downstairs, she heard Mark's footsteps, followed by Daniel's low voice. She couldn't make out their words this time, but the tone alone soothed her, warm, gentle, thoughtful. She hadn't planned on letting anyone into her life so soon. She was supposed to heal in silence, away from everyone. But now, with two men offering a kind of warmth she hadn't expected, she found herself wondering if life had its own plans. Maybe people came into our lives when we needed them most, not when we were ready. Maybe healing wasn't about being alone, but about letting safe people help us breathe again. As the snow whispered against the window and the fire crackled faintly below, Emma felt the tightness in her chest loosen. She didn't know who Daniel and Mark really were or why their presence calmed her so deeply, but for the first time in months, she wasn't afraid of tomorrow. She didn't know what the next day would bring. She didn't know how long the storm would last. She didn't know why these men felt strangely familiar, almost like memories she had forgotten. All she knew was this: tonight, she had been welcomed with a warmth she hadn't experienced in years. A warmth she didn't know she needed until two strangers gave it freely. And as she drifted off to sleep, she felt something new taking root inside her, something quiet, hopeful, and waiting. The next morning, Emma woke to the soft glow of sunlight reflected off the thick blanket of snow covering Silver Ridge. The storm had painted the valley white, transforming the familiar mountains into quiet giants, their peaks hidden in mist. She wrapped herself in a thick sweater and descended the stairs, the smell of fresh coffee pulling her forward. The lodge felt different now, not just warm from the fire, but alive with the energy of two men who seemed to exist in harmony with the space. Daniel was near the stove, humming softly as he prepared breakfast. The soft sound of his voice was comforting, like a familiar song she couldn't name. Mark sat by the window, arms crossed, watching the snow drift lazily downward. His quiet presence was grounding, like a steady anchor amid the storm outside. Seeing them together, Emma felt the lodge itself seemed to breathe in tandem with them, welcoming her in ways she hadn't anticipated. "You slept okay?" Mark asked, his voice low but steady, breaking the comfortable silence. Emma nodded. Better than I have in a long time. I didn't expect this. Daniel smiled, a soft curve of lips that carried an unspoken understanding. That's what this place does. It's easy to forget the world when you're here. They were talking about simple things, but every word felt deliberate, like a thread weaving her back into life. For months, she had been isolated in her own thoughts, lonely even among friends. And yet here, with two men she barely knew, she felt seen. Truly seen. Breakfast was quiet but warm. Daniel moved around the kitchen with practiced ease, preparing eggs and toast, while Mark carried plates and cups, his hands steady despite the cold air slipping in from the snow-covered door. Emma watched them, noting the care in their movements, the way they anticipated her needs without her asking, the way they worked silently to make her feel at home. It was strange, unsettling in a comforting way, and it made her realize just how starved she had been for this kind of attention. After breakfast, the wind outside increased, rattling the windows and sweeping the snow into small drifts against the lodge. Mark stood up, bringing more firewood from a stacked pile near the door. Looks like the roads will be closed today. We might be here for a while, he said casually, but Emma could tell he was both informing and reassuring her. There was no fear in his voice, just certainty. I'm fine with that, Emma replied before thinking. The words surprised even her. Alone in a strange town, with two strangers she hardly knew, she felt safe. She had expected discomfort, maybe awkwardness, but instead she found herself curious about this unexpected turn of events. She wondered how often life surprised people in ways that felt almost like fate. The hours passed softly. Daniel and Mark shared small stories about the lodge, about Silveridge, and about winters past. And Emma listened intently, occasionally interjecting with her own memories. She told them about the college hikes she had done in the area, the friends she had lost touch with, and the quiet moments of heartbreak that had led her here. Neither man judged her. They only listened, and in their listening she felt a subtle connection forming. It was not dramatic or overwhelming, it was tender, almost imperceptible. But it wrapped around her like the warmth from the fire. As the day grew colder, Emma found herself sitting closer to the fire than she had intended. Mark handed her a thicker blanket, their hands brushing slightly. It was nothing overt, nothing romantic in the way people usually expected, but it carried meaning. Emma felt a flutter in her chest, a gentle awareness that she was not invisible anymore. Someone noticed her, cared for her, and welcomed her presence without expectation. She hadn't realized how deeply she had missed this sense of belonging. Daniel came and sat across from her, holding his own cup of tea, eyes thoughtful. You don't have to carry everything alone, he said softly. It wasn't a challenge or advice, it was a gift. Those words, simple and unassuming, sank deeper than she expected. Emma felt the weight of her solitude lift, even just a little. She realized that this moment, this unexpected pause in her life, was exactly what she needed to start feeling again. The snowstorm thickened, cloaking the valley in silence except for the occasional gust against the windows. Outside, the world had slowed. Inside, life felt intimate, warm, and real. The three of them moved around naturally, sharing small duties, speaking in tones softer than the storm, laughing lightly at stories of past misadventures. There was no rush, no pressure, just presence. Emma felt herself relaxing into a rhythm she hadn't experienced in months. As evening approached, storm outside continued unabated, but inside the lodge glowed with quiet comfort. The fire's flicker cast dancing shadows across the walls, reflecting on the three of them as they sat closer together, yet comfortably apart. Conversation turned to past heartbreaks and dreams not yet fulfilled. Emma found herself speaking more openly than she had in years. She spoke of her fears, of her longing for connection, and for the first time she allowed herself to feel hope without shame. Mark listened, occasionally nodding, his gaze steady but not invasive. Daniel's eyes softened whenever she spoke of loss, and his presence carried this silent acknowledgement that her pain was valid. She didn't have to explain, justify, or hide. She simply existed, and they honored that existence with quiet attention. The feeling was intoxicating in the gentlest way, like sunlight filtering through fog. At one point, the power flickered. For a brief second, the lodge was dim, and Emma felt a pang of unease. But Daniel immediately moved to reassure her, lighting candles around the room with calm efficiency. "See? Nothing to worry about," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder lightly. The touch was fleeting but grounded her, a silent promise of safety. She didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned just slightly into the reassurance, realizing how starved she had been for physical signs of comfort later. As the storm roared outside, the three of them shared quiet moments by the fire. Daniel read aloud from an old book of local history, his voice calm and melodic. Mark, occasionally interjecting with humorous comments, made her laugh. It was easy, effortless, and yet profoundly moving. Emma realized she hadn't laughed this freely in months. The lodge, the fire, the men's gentle attentions, all of it combined to create a sanctuary she hadn't thought possible. Hours slipped by unnoticed. The snowstorm outside continued, relentless and beautiful in its own way. Emma found herself reflecting on the past, the loneliness, the heartbreak, and the unexpected comfort of now. She thought about how life sometimes offered warmth not through grand gestures, but through the simple, consistent presence of people who cared enough to notice. She thought about how fleeting moments could reshape a person's outlook on life, and how trust could form quietly, without pressure or expectation. As night deepened, Emma sat between Daniel and Mark, the firelight flickering over their faces. She didn't feel confused or rushed. She didn't feel anything like fear. She felt presence. She felt acknowledged. She felt hope. The storm outside became background noise to the stronger, subtler storm of emotions slowly unfolding inside her heart. Daniel leaned back in his chair, watching the fire. "Sometimes the right people show up when you least expect it," he said, almost to himself. Emma's heart caught in a way that surprised her. She looked at him, then at Mark, and realized that these two men, so different in demeanor yet alike in their kindness, had become anchors in a life she had feared was drifting. She felt an unfamiliar but welcome sense of anticipation, a quiet curiosity about what could grow from this unexpected connection. There was no rush, no pressure, no expectation of romance in the usual sense. It was something subtler, stronger, and infinitely more touching, a shared understanding of human vulnerability and the gentle, almost sacred acknowledgement of another's presence. Emma realized that she was not falling in love, not yet, but she was opening her heart to the possibility of feeling again, of trusting again, of hoping again. Outside, the storm continued to rage, a reminder that the world could be harsh and unpredictable. Inside, the lodge glowed with warmth, laughter, and quiet conversation. Emma felt a gentle peace settle over her, the kind that comes when you realize that for the first time in a long while, you are not alone. That safety, care, and subtle affection can exist without pressure, without expectation, and without rush. That warmth can enter your life quietly, unexpectedly, and change everything. As she finally prepared to retire for the night, Emma paused by the window, looking out at the snow-covered valley. The storm's intensity no longer frightened her. It was beautiful, yes, but it was also a reminder that life's challenges could be faced more easily when shared with the right people. She turned back toward the fire, toward Daniel and Mark, and realized that the night had already given her something she hadn't realized she was searching for: the ability to feel again. She climbed the stairs slowly, her thoughts filled not with loneliness, but with gratitude, curiosity, and a quiet, tender hope. The lodge had become more than a temporary shelter from the storm. It had become a space where hearts could begin to heal. And the two men, so unexpectedly welcoming, had shown her that sometimes life's warmth appears not through grand gestures, but through steady, quiet presence, genuine care, and shared moments of laughter, conversation, and simple human connection. As she drifted to sleep that night, the storm outside seemed less frightening.